Movies are special effects.
Welcome and welcome back to WD Magicast for the week of July 31st, 2022. This is episode 189. WD Magicast, the show about the mouse, the Marvels, the galaxy, and beyond. I am your host, Matthew Graken. In this week's show, I'll be joined by Dave, and we will be talking about the Industrial Light and Magic documentary series on Disney Plus, what we thought of it, and discuss the 6 episodes that was gifted to us. I unfortunately don't have a survey this week because I was busy with all the name changes. Yes, a lot of work went to the switchover, and it's finally here. Your first episode of WD Magicast, even though it's episode 189. Like I said, the show's still rolling. Some changes have been made, a little more than I was expecting, but I think I'm good with the final product. There's more magic coming your way soon. Stay tuned for announcements as those things will be coming along. And thank you for your patience. Thank you for your encouragement. It really means a lot to me that we're still going and you're still coming along with us. So in the meantime, we'll be back after these words from our friends and sponsors.
Hello there, Disney Marvels podcast friends. This is Anthony King, host of the new podcast, Force Ghost Conversations. Each week, this show will be your home for cozy, deep dive discussions into all things Star Wars. We will break down the latest news, announcements, movies, TV shows, comics, books, and everything else in a galaxy far, far away. We can be found on every major podcast listening site, and you can also join the conversation with us via Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Just search Force Ghost Conversations. We look forward to having you join us around the campfire then for some Force Ghost conversations, and may the Force be with you.
And now, on with the show. In life, we find sometimes things start because of desperation or lack of other options. Sometimes it's the needs. Sometimes it's a happy accident of a group of people coming together, putting something around, creating something, enjoying creating something, and it leads to something bigger. But enough about this podcast. I want to talk about the new Light and Magic documentary on Disney Plus. And to speak of light and magic, I have to bring on someone who brings a lot of light and magic in everyday life to people as he's doing his job. And of course, I'm talking about Dave Goldman. Welcome back to the show, Dave. Happy first episode of the WD Magicast.
Thank you, Matthew. Happy first episode.
Episode 1 or episode 189. Depends how you look at it. Let's go with 189 of episode 1.
Yeah, you could have got a new studio at least for the new episode, for the new show.
I blew all the money on the email address.
Oh. But no, everything seems to be coming along. It's going to be a work in progress.
Oh, absolutely.
But I think you're making, the right decisions, and I'm happy that you had us all together and did a little, powwow about it. So
it's a very exciting time here at WD Magicast. I'm excited. I get to other people are excited as well. It's just got a very positive energy, and I think things are heading in a very good direction.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
So said the captain of the Titanic, but we're not going to go there.
Yeah, let's not go there.
Yeah, no, things definitely going in the right direction. And in a similar way, I think this is just it speaks to the documentary itself, the Light and Magic documentary. I've only seen the first 4 episodes, but my understanding you've seen all 6.
Yes, I saw 6.
And I thought it was. I mean, it's a documentary, so you expect some of this stuff, but I'm surprised with how much archival footage there is, and not so much to the extent of them, actually filming. A lot of its focus is around Star Wars, of course, because that, how they came about in the first place. And it really, that's George's pet project. So they're going to focus a lot on the Star Wars stuff. And a lot of the stuff that they did came from Star Wars.
Right.
It's the stuff that's outside of that, of them sitting around, having meetings, sitting at the editing table, or just goofing off.
Right. Yeah. It looked like somebody was following somebody around with the old VHS recorder back in the day.
The little 8mm camera.
Yeah, and we're just recording all the actions going on. I agree with you. I'm surprised about that as well.
But it's a little slow. I mean, it's a documentary. It's a documentary kind of to the best point. It tries to make it as enjoyable as possible, but it is, there's no big action. You see some of the action from the movie. I love seeing the behind the scenes stuff and them talking about, well, we had to build this and we had to create this, and this is something that didn't exist, or we took one of the cameras from the 10 Commandments that Paramount was not using but still holding on to.
Right.
They acquired it, repurposed it, and used it to make Star Wars. And editing this out and changing this around. I thought it was quite fantastic. And I love watching that stuff, which is why I always like watching like the bonus stuff on DVDs, which
right.
For me to switch over to just buying stuff streaming. Well, no, I like my behind the scenes stuff. Because there's the story of that the movie tells you, but then there's the story of how we got the movie. And this gives you a lot of that, not just for Star Wars, the Indiana Jones, some of E.T. They touch on the non Lucas film and Disney productions that they worked on. Poltergeist. Like how they made that house disappear in Poltergeist.
Yeah, the implosion. Yeah.
Yeah, that blew my mind.
Yeah, it's weird. This docuseries opens your eyes to a world of like, you don't realize how many movies ILM did until you, like, you know what I mean? If when you watch the show, then you realize, holy crap, these guys did 1 million movies. They were the thing to go to. They were the studio to go to if you had any kind of special effects to do.
Right, and it was George's idea for them to do that. He set it up for himself for his own personal use, because at the time when he was making Star Wars, there was no special effects.
Right.
There's hundreds of them now.
Yeah.
You can trip all over with them. But there was nothing like that then. There was a couple, and they all shuttered. So whenever he needed something, well, how am I going to do this? I need this to happen. I need this to happen, because I can't tell it without the special effects. So he spent his own money that he got from American Graffiti to create this. He found a couple people that had maybe a little knowledge of the movie business, and they started building things and creating things. It's an amazing story. But so they left for a little bit, and then they came back together, and George said, you know what, why don't you work on some of these other projects? Oh, Steven, my friend over here, Steven's doing something. Why don't you help him with this? And then this person over here, help him with that. So he started helping George's friends, but it kept the company together, and they kept on exploring new things and building things. And then when Empire came out, it's like, oh, okay, come back, and let's work on that.
You caught the part where he negotiated with Steven Spielberg about, okay, yeah, you can use my studio, but you got to use it for 3 movies. I was like, look at this guy. Hence the Raiders of the Indiana Jones series,
I'd heard that story before about how they came up with Indiana Jones, and in some different details in the telling. But it's an interesting story how that came about. The American James Bond, but okay, he's a history teacher, and this, but it just makes me appreciate the movie even more. And I always wondered, it's like, how did they make that face melt? Like, I kept on thinking, okay, they had a grocery store, store clothing mannequin, and just put on some clay and melted it off that way. No, they had a skull and built all the layers.
Yeah.
So much more detail to that.
And what they do, they put like a heat lamp on it and then just recorded it in the slow film or something. You know what I mean? And then,
it was 70 frames per second, which is higher, that's how you create slow motion, by you doing more frames. So if you want to speed something up, you do less frames. If you want to slow something down, you do more frames. So They put more frames on. Also catches more detail. Whenever you do it that way. They did that way, and it was, and then just you got that really creepy and yet cool effect at the end of Raiders where the Nazi's face melts off. And explaining how they did the ghost scene and then the smoke. That was funny. I'm like, I always remember the ghost scene because as a kid that did creep me out.
Yes.
And then I see one of the models that they used. It was basically a ping pong with this cheesy face drawn on it. Wait a second, that's not the creepy one that comes up to the screen and just, it's a girl's face and then turns into this like skeleton. It just, it's not that one. Well, where's that little?
No, but it definitely did. This series gave me a different look on George Lucas as well too, because he just, like, I knew he was the creator of Star Wars and the director, whatever, but I didn't realize how much trust he had to put in these guys to get this movie going. You know what I mean? Because he's out. Like at one point he was away, right, filming the scenes and stuff, while
most of it,
these guys in California doing all the stop motion action and stuff, and
so here he's in London and was it Pakistan? I think it was.
We're overseas.
Yeah, so he's in the desert. He's back in the London studios, filming this stuff, and he's sending over notes. Okay, we need this, we need that, and they're going, what?
Yeah, exactly.
We'll mock something up. We'll build it. Maybe we put this here, and especially when they had to create the Millennium Falcon, and they're sending over. Here's an idea, George. What did you think of that? Oh, I think this one's good. Yeah. All right, we'll work on this, and he to create the Millennium Falcon, he picked up 2 plates and go, wait a second. Yeah. This could work, and then we get a direction with it. Yeah. Because the gap's there not because there was an escape pod missing, but because it's an arrow pointing in that direction.
Yeah, it was like there was a different drawing that he took, but he took the cockpit and then the satellite dish off, right, and then he put it onto his new design.
Right, it was something completely different.
Yeah, on the flying saucer design.
Oh, because it was the blockade runner.
Yes.
But since that was being used, it was almost an identical thing that was being used in...
It escapes me. I just saw it too. I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
It wasn't Battlestar, because they actually did stuff for Battlestar. Or maybe it was. It was something else. Some of the other space programs that came out there. Space 1999, maybe. So it was a very similar thing. So let's salvage this off here because we like that, and it's already built. So we'll stick it on the side here because they had a great anecdote. Instead of, because we don't want to put it on the left because that's where the Americans drive. We want to make this more of a world audience thing, so we'll stick it on the right because everyone else drives on the right. Steering wheel is on the right side, and then to counterbalance it, we'll put the satellite dish on the left side, so that way there's a natural balance.
Yeah.
And the layers and layers of models, and they were just buying World War II, hobby shop models.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, here's a little part here. Okay, we can take this, paint it silver and stick it in there. So that way it's not just on the surface level, but you had several layers going down into the ship. Everything seemed to have a purpose.
Yeah.
The amount of detail that they put into the models alone and everything is, I think, what really gave them so much credibility.
Yes.
And kind of pushed things forward. Same thing whenever they built the giant Star Destroyer that's at the very beginning of the Star Wars movie. That's we'll make it look good up top, but we're going to make the bottom extremely detailed, and we're going to bring the camera across this way. And
they filmed it upside down, didn't they? The ship.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because how they justify, okay, the lighting is this way, and figure out, okay, this is how the light's going to come. So instead, if we move the Star Destroyer, it's going to change the lighting on it. So we're just going to move the camera so that way the lighting is static on it. It's not moving.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't, have to worry about changing shadows and whatnot.
Yeah.
And we'll pan the camera across things. I mean, the way that these people came up with it, and you could tell, especially in the first two, they talk about how much fun they had making them.
Yes.
Especially they went on to talk about Empire being so much fun.
Mm-hmm.
That how they were creating everything, where Jedi became a lot more about the process and more about the details, and okay, now we're being professionals about it.
Yeah.
So it wasn't as fun, and I think in some ways that does come across into the movies because you look at Empire and the original New Hope, where it is a lot more fun and whimsical, and you can see that they're kind of testing out different things and pushing the boundary. Where Jedi, to me, always feels, and this is why I think Jedi doesn't come across as well, is that it is a lot more they're not taking the same risks.
Right. Yeah, I got you. I know what you're saying.
I want to say that. And also to see them talk, Ralph McQuarrie is in it, and to talk about, you actually see him and how he does the process, in his creating of stuff. And okay, we're going to take his idea and then tweak it here and work with that, because he came up with a lot of the original designs for everything, and even to this day everyone goes back to those original drawings to draw inspiration of characters or putting out merchandise. And
was he the one that did the matte paintings too?
He did a lot of the matte paintings. Yeah, he did the Cloud City.
Yeah, and to be honest, I didn't know that even existed until I saw this, and that gave me a new new direction in watching it now, because I'm like, what? That's a painting in the background?
Yeah. Him, and then there was the other guy whose father worked for Disney, who did a lot of the matte paintings for like Mary Poppins and some of the other movies, and Treasure Island. So it's the same thing. So I'm watching that he's doing the painting for Hoth.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at the sky. I'm like, wait, I just thought that was like a picture, or not a someone painted that.
Yeah. Now I'm gonna watch it again just to see if I can see the lines of like where the painting ended and started.
Problem is, they've now gone back multiple times with that digital paintbrush and go, you have to break out the VHS.
Yeah, that's the only way to find it, because he digitalized everything and just souped everything up, so we're not gonna catch it.
No, they've cleaned it up multiple times over. Yeah. A lot of it's still the originals there, but they've gone through and worked it over. Think of Cloud City, that they've gone and put in more of a sky background in times where it was more ceiling. They've gone actually cut out some of the ceilings and put in the sky backgrounds with some of the digital art and more of a sunset, and they've changed things around. And that's something else that speaks to George, is that he's never going to be done with these movies.
Yeah.
As long as he can, he's going to go back and tweak it. Every time a new technology or an advancement in technology comes out, he wants to go back and work it over. I mean, the perfectionist nature that he has. He will never.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, he's never going to be satisfied with the end product.
Right. Well, when he wanted to switch everything over to digital, I remember, like he said, once they got the technology he wanted, that's when he said, all right, now I'm ready for the prequels, because now he can digitalize everything. And then in my head, I'm sitting there going, yeah. And then you're going to go back and tinker with the original trilogy and digitalize that too.
Yep. So it was I think a very fascinating series. And I kind of got lost at one point. They were talking about the early days of digital. And they had the guys like, oh, so I scanned my hand into the computer and start, doing stuff. I'm like, I got a little lost on that, where that went, because it seemed like they brought that in and then left it. It's like,
right.
Wait, I drew this, here's a cup that we rendered. Okay, so where is this integrating? Because you didn't use any digital in Empire that I'm aware of.
Right.
They used potatoes and bubble gum, but they didn't use But that's the stuff I love, and I love hearing this stuff. That
and he said his shoe was in there too, or something. He goes, right there, that's
what that was, I think, Jedi. But it's like, okay, we're going through the asteroid field, so we went down to the grocery market, got a bunch of potatoes, spray painted them, and stuck them with it.
Yeah. But it does a good job of showing the improvement of the technology that they got, with the computers, and it showed the struggle between the old school guys and the realization that they might become obsolete because of all this new technology coming in.
Yeah, but I think in some ways having this documentary is paramount in the fact that we would never have the digital stuff if it wasn't for the practical stuff. And to this day, I still always say practical is better than digital.
Mm-hmm.
As far as digital has come so far, and it has improved, and your eye doesn't always know. Like whenever the prequels come out, it's like your eye knows, okay, this is a practical effect, this is a digital effect.
Right.
And it's getting harder. Either I'm getting older or it's getting harder to tell the difference. But the practical, the art behind it, and every time they had to push the technology and push the ideas and push how it's done, instead of just coming up with a new software program, coming up with a whole new way to shoot the film, and making sure the lighting hits it just right. And okay, we built this model, we have one shot to get this done.
Mm-hmm.
And if we blow that shot, it's another, $500,000, whatever, and another 3-4 months of time to
redo it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just fantastic, and it helps me. It doesn't spoil the magic of the movies for me. No. It helps me appreciate more. Mm-hmm. When we see those credits at the end, going, oh, Ron Howard and this guy and that guy. I missed that, not actually using people's names. So Chrissy English, Barry Jenkins, Deborah Chow, we know those people, but Richard Eldon, Dennis Muren, John Dykstra. You see those names and go, okay, whatever.
Right.
They're not as part as Mark Hamill. No, they're in some ways they're actually more important than Mark Hamill.
Exactly.
Yeah. Mark Hamill had, not saying that he had it easy, but compared to what these people had to do, he did have it easy.
Right. Well, that's what I was saying. Like how this show gives you a different view of George Lucas because, or the crew that he rolled with, because they were the heart and soul behind the project, because without them, it never would have gotten anywhere.
No, we would, and hearing Spielberg saying, okay, yeah, he sat us down in a room to watch the early rough cut of Star Wars without any special effects in it, and everyone's going, I don't get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And here's George, oh, no, don't worry, you're going to see this, and this is going to happen. I don't see it. I don't get it.
Yeah.
But thankfully, they Fox stuck with him and said, okay, you just keep going with that.
Well, speaking of Fox, did you get the part where they were like, they didn't want to fund the finale of the original Star Wars, like the whole Death Star explosion and stuff? I think they wanted to end the movie with them, I guess, just fending off Vader and an end scene. They didn't want to fund that whole last section. Can you imagine if Star Wars?
I missed that part.
Yeah.
No, we can't end that way.
You know what I mean? Now with that, but Lucas got them to, stay on what he wanted to do, and they were able to finish the project, obviously.
Well, in some ways, and if I remember this correctly, one of the brilliant things that George did, besides controlling all the toy and merchandise sale, the movies are distributed by Fox. So Fox does pay some money and get it, but he controls creative and productive rights. So the movies are his.
Mm-hmm.
Not so much Fox's. Fox is, on the distributing arm of it, but he gets a lot more say in it. So they can say, this is how we want it, but inevitably he does get the final say of saying no. But you always try to make nice and whatnot, because they could always say, all right, then we're not distributing the movie.
Mm-hmm.
But George was very smart that he was funding a lot of this stuff, especially after Jedi, after the original Star Wars, where he had a lot more money and he was able to start funding this stuff on his own. This is all kind of himself.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, as difficult as that is, that was also the smart thing to do.
Yeah. Well, it was also, we brought it up before, it was also smart for him to lend out the studio to other projects and stuff while he was still, contemplating Empire and Jedi. This way he could still have that cash cow rolling in to help him fund, the technology and future movies.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And then again, and just keep trying to push the envelope, pushing. It's like, okay, well, in the first movie, you can see edit line, matte lines and stuff. So you can see, you have the X-wing flying through, but there's the little black shadow around the whole thing as it flies across. So they created a whole new camera thing that took up the whole room to eliminate that, and just the whole process. And it blows my mind. I don't fully understand what they're talking about, but it's just absolutely amazing that they were able to concept this, created, and it worked.
Yeah. And even the stop motion characters that they had to do, that had to be so monotonous to just move the figure, take a picture, come back and manipulate it a millimeter, and then take another picture. And the tauntaun, like he's like, you saw that part, I think, where he's like, not only do I got to move the head, but I got to move the bags on his saddle and stuff to go. If he's moving up, this got to go up. I'm like, no way. I'm not that patient.
No, but it was, that they did that, and then when they made the AT-ATs, but they fortunately put in the hydraulics, so everything moved naturally in motion. So all they just had to move was a leg, and the whole thing moved.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that putting that kind of detail into everything and forward thinking, and it pays out. And then you go to Jedi, and they're laying out the shot, and they're using the Star Wars figures to map out how the shot's gonna go.
Yeah, doing the speeder bike chase down.
I did realize that. Okay, so we had the scout trooper on the one, and then Leia is on the other side of the trees. I thought that was actually Carrie Fisher on the speeder, No, it's a bottle.
Whoops. Yeah. No, but what was the other? The Rancor. Did you see that?
Oh yes, I saw the right
They
car.
wanted to use that as like a bodysuit.
They wanted to be
Actually,
the
for the
greatest
first
Godzilla bodysuit.
Yeah, and I guess it was too big and clumsy, so they had to scrap that.
Yeah, but they actually built it. They started
Yeah.
building it and everything. It goes, oh, it doesn't work.
I'd love to have that for
This whole
Halloween.
thing.
I'd like
You
to
know
have
that's
that for
sitting-
Halloween.
Yeah, it's sitting in someone's basement somewhere, you know.
Yeah.
And then they create the puppet version of it with the hydraulic arms and stuff, where it's picking up it's actually it's so detailed and well built that it could pick up a cup, pour it into another cup,
Yeah.
drop it, pick up the other cup, and and manipulate stuff that way. And then they shot the one scene in reverse where he's eating the Gamorrean guard. Oh, really?
It
Oh,
all works.
it's just mind blowing
Yeah.
what this stuff that these people created and came up with. So it's a fantastic series.
Yes.
It's got some heavy hitters that are pushing behind it. So Ron Howard, Brian Geiser, who he does a lot of crazy stuff, and he does stuff with Ron before. Justin Wickens, Lawrence Kasdan, of course Kathleen Kennedy,
Mhm.
and Michelle Rendrois. You can tell that they really wanted to make sure this came across well, and I think it does. And again, going back to, you have early day footage of and you have the guys talking, and I give them credit to doing this now, because here's something that Matt's talked about with Henson, where we've lost a number of the original guys who started all this stuff.
Mhm.
Where most of these guys are still around for Industrial Light and Magic to be able to tell the stories.
Right.
Who were there and did all this stuff. So we have the stories to tell. Because when they go, those stories are going with them.
Right.
A guy talking about, well, my dad bought a surplus airplane water landing chute. Saying, what are you going to do with that? So they turned it into a giant slipping slide.
Yeah.
So in between, while they're working, okay, let's take a break, and they'll throw in their bathing suits, or they got into, looked like a dumpster or something that they filled with water to use as a pool.
To break up the 14-hour, monotonous days of playing with puppets, man. They had to break that tension, or I would assume they'd go cuckoo.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely.
And it's quite something. And again, that's the stuff that I'm surprised that we have footage of. But it just adds to the story, and just adds to understanding what was going on.
I wonder, because they didn't really delve into it. John Dykstra, I wonder if there was some other reason why he wasn't allowed to come back for Empire. They didn't say anything. I think they briefly said that George said that he was in over his head, so they didn't ask him to come back. But it looked like he did a fantastic job. So I'm wondering if there was some other thing that.
I'm sure there is. I couldn't tell you what that is, but I'm sure there is. And again, to play nice, since he did come on and do stuff on the show, I guess we're not going to go into details about that. Yeah. We don't need to rehash.
Right, the bad blood, if there was bad blood. Yeah.
If he did something, someone said something, whatever the reason is.
Yeah.
That was 30 plus years ago.
Yeah.
40 years ago.
Yeah.
We don't need to bring it up for this.
They didn't even have to bring him in if they didn't want to. You know what I mean?
No.
So.
But they allowed him to come in, let him tell, his stories and whatnot. Mm-hmm. And of course they touched on it, but I think they touched on it in a nice enough way that, okay, something happened. You're not going to say what, but something happened.
Right.
And then you moved on from there. But then you get like the likes of James Cameron,
Yeah.
and some of these other ones coming and going, talking about how this influenced them.
Yeah, did you say it was a funny part with Cameron? Because it was one of the effects. I forget which one what it was, but he told his wife, "I'm going to make a movie now." After seeing that, he's
I'm
like,
quitting my job.
Yeah.
You need to support us. I'm going to make a movie.
Yeah.
That was funny. I thought that was funny.
Yeah.
And there was something else that caught my attention.
Did you get to the Pixar part?
No, I didn't get there yet. I didn't get to Pixar. I was anticipating that, but haven't gone there. I did. I was in this. Okay, this is what I was gonna say. I remember watching years ago, on TV where they show how some of this stuff was made. I'm like, oh, it's gonna be old footage rehashed that we've seen before on previous behind the scenes making of Star Wars of how they made stuff. And there's a little bit of that in there. There's a lot more footage in here that I've never seen in any behind the scenes or specials or makings of the Star Wars. Some of it, yes, but either you get that clip but longer, or you just get a whole bunch of other stuff that I've never seen before. I mean, they really, really let you behind the curtain here and just exposed to what they had to deal with. They all believed in George's vision. No idea what that vision was.
Right.
And they just, okay, we're gonna keep working at it. We're gonna keep it. He keeps coming down and yelling at us and pushing us. But they stuck with it. I'm sure you asked them back then what they were working on, they would have told you something different. But now they're just saying that they how much they by the end of it, how much they were happy with what they did and proud of how it all came out and all came together. Which, because I think, and I got the sense that they didn't have that much faith in themselves that this was going to pan out. It's a gig, it's a paying job.
Right.
Get paid for a few months and find something else.
Yeah, and George was able to, as the technology got better and people left to do other gigs and other stuff, he was always able to bring in, top of the line people to keep the ball rolling with this. And I don't know if it was a combination of him looking for these people or these people applying to him saying, I want to be a part of this, but nothing but the best guy. I guess that was the place to be. So that's where everybody gravitated to.
Yeah. And it's one of those where you may not have thought that you want to start off or working in this area, but George goes, no, why don't you try doing this?
Yeah. Right.
And you kind of, which is very similar to what Walt Disney used to do too. You may start it off in animation, but then as he started working on the theme parks, he goes, why don't you come over here? I need your help with this. So why don't you work on this? And next thing you know, you're creating a theme park attraction. And so that there's another similarity between George and Walt Disney. So you get, you trust in George. I mean, George, again, is a perfectionist. He is very protective of his properties, and rightfully so.
Yes.
These are his babies. And you do get a sense of that. No one actually comes out and says it, but you do get a very much of a sense of how hands-on he was with everything, every aspect of it. I go back to the original Star Wars, that they show you some of the test footage where you see, okay, here's a guy in an X-wing pilot, flying along, and then it cuts to the World War II footage.
Yeah.
That was representing of here's the dogfight.
Yeah.
That those reels still exist. amazes me as well, because a lot of times, especially stuff from back then, you don't think, okay, no point in archiving this. We did it, it's done. Toss out all the other stuff.
Wasn't that what he said? Was he wanted it to be a dogfight in space or something like that?
A space opera.
Yeah.
It is a space opera.
Yeah.
Showing Al Guinness on the platform 6 feet off the ground, and then you see him, the original, and then you see it with the map point on it, and looks like it's 400 feet down. And even the artist goes, "Why would someone build that? I don't know. It's not believable." But the fact that it's there and people buy it,
yeah,
that's what it's about.
He was a foot off the ground probably, but it didn't look like that in the movie.
Nope.
So, but I don't want to spoil it for you, but the Pixar part was interesting to me.
No, please go.
Yeah, the Pixar part was it, because I've always tied Pixar with Disney. I don't know. I forgot that it was a part of the ILM, but like they mentioned that technology in there, and I'm like, is that the Pixar that we know of today? And then they just went on about it. I'm like, it is. So it was like a group of guys that wanted to focus on animation.
Yep.
So that's why Lucas, he sold it. He sold that section. I don't know if that was to Disney or just another company at the time.
He sold it. Eventually ended up in Apple and went from Apple to Disney.
Right.
Was there somebody else before that? Might have been one other one. I don't quote me on that. I think it inevitably it ended up with Steve Jobs. Initially I thought it was an Apple product. I didn't realize, this is going back a while ago when I found out that it was a Lucas thing initially.
Yeah.
Which I didn't realize that.
I didn't. I was like, what? Now I'm wondering, because like the question I would have is, does Lucas regret selling it back then, because he could have made a boatload of money today if he still had it,
Well, it probably not. But it's funny how it all comes back around. It's like they were one company, separated off, and now they found each other again.
Yeah, they're all reunited.
Yep.
Yep.
Reunited, and it feels so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, they show the previews of that, them working on Transformers, and then a whole bunch of some other stuff. I mean, like you said, the amount of things that ILM has had their creative hands in.
Back to the Future, Jurassic Park, Casper, all these like.
Said Poltergeist, E.T., Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan.
Yeah, that one I was like, what?
I did know that. Because I remember on a more recent watching of it, and I'm sitting through the credits, I'm like, Industrial Light and Magic actually worked on this. I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
And it's just good to see, and good, that back then, and again, that's when they did some digital stuff, and it's like, it didn't have to be good. It just had to be believable. And I remember watching that. Did I see it in the theaters, or was it VHS? Whenever I first saw it, and just watching it going, wow.
Yeah. Wrath of Khan. I'm sorry, it was a good movie.
Yeah, it's a fantastic movie.
Put the worm in the ear, that always gets me. Man.
Oh, that, yeah. Mind controlling worms.
Yeah.
But in the battle at the end in the nebula, just incredible special effects. Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah, that too.
That, again, all came from ILM, so it has to thank, I had someone told me, Battlestar Galactica is better than Star Wars. Maybe, but if it wasn't for Star Wars, you wouldn't have your Battlestar Galactica. So you know what? Take that. I'll show you Battlestar Galactica and give you an ILM to show you that it's.
Do you think? Because again, they don't go into this either. But did Star Trek? I wonder if Star Trek had any kind of helping George to come up with Star Wars. You know what I mean? Was because obviously Star Trek was out at that time. The series, Kirk.
The
and
series
all that.
came out beforehand. From my understanding, what I've heard of stories that it was one of the issues that they had with coming up with a name for this that would sell.
Oh,
That they had people walking up and down in Los Angeles saying, "Hey, want to take a survey? What do you think of these titles?"
Mm-hmm.
And it was Star something or whatever. And they go, "No, that sounds so much like Star Trek. That's that thing with Captain Kirk, right? No, this is something different."
Mm-hmm.
So they worked long and hard to try and come up with a name. Obviously, eventually Star Wars won, but there was many other things that they were testing on. Star Wars in itself, and they mention in here, is more based on Flash Gordon and the old Flash Gordon serials.
Right.
Which I remember going back to my youth, watching Doctor Who on Saturday nights on PBS would be immediately followed up a lot of the times by the old Flash Gordon serials. So I've seen some of those. So it's interesting because it's the same stuff that influenced George to create Star Wars.
So it wasn't like George saw Star Trek and said, "You know what? Hold my beer. I'm going to make a better."
Not quite. But his influence is more from Flash Gordon.
Flash Gordon's, yeah.
But it's not without some sort of influence, I am certain.
Right.
But there's a very different style about it, where one, it is a lot more narrative driven because you didn't have the special effects.
Mm-hmm.
You have some, but not to that extent. And where the other one relies a lot more on the special effects to help tell the story than just straight narrative.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, to say that there is absolutely no influence there, I sure George couldn't even tell you that without twitching or winking his eye. No, absolutely not. There's got to be some sort of, a lot of those people. I mean, you think of the time in George's circle. Again, it's being Spielberg, Coppola, and there was one other one that I was like, oh wait, he was in that group too, and I forgot the director's name. But there was, that crew of them coming out of college together.
The guy that did Ghostbusters, right? Because he was interviewed in there too, and I think I can't remember his name. Is that the guy you're thinking of, or no?
It may be.
That's not Zemeckis, is it?
Is it Zemeckis? It could be Zemeckis. As I said, the name completely escapes me. I'm trying to see. No, I'm not gonna be able to pick it out of this lineup. Trying to just look through the credits here of everybody who's in it. But either way,
right?
That crew there that they did all right for themselves, I would say. The Spielberg guy, I think one day I think people are actually going to notice him.
Mm-hmm.
And I see a lot of potential in Spielberg.
Yeah, I was listening to somebody. Spielberg made like 80 movies or something like that compared to like Lucas's 7. I'm like, holy crap. And I'm sure almost all of those movies had ILM in them.
Most likely, just about. It's the friends helping each other out. Where you even Lucas had some sort of influence with Coppola. And even the was on Paramount Plus, where they have the docu-series of making of The Godfather There is a Lucas character that shows up at one point, and I don't think they use the name, but that's who it's supposed to be.
Right.
But George is more involved in so many other things, and he just wants to make his stuff.
Yeah.
Well, Spielberg is making his stuff in other people's stuff. George also, not that he was directly involved in making the special effects, but when he wasn't making Star Wars, he was helping control, doing stuff with ILM and keeping that business going. And he's content with his little world. He doesn't need to make all these other movies. He made THX 1138, which I don't care what the critics said. That was an enjoyable movie. American Graffiti, and then he made his 6 Star Wars movies. I think he was involved in. Was he involved in Red Tails? I think he was involved in Red Tails too.
Was the Indiana Jones series? He was involved in that too, right? Or was that just straight Spielberg?
He was involved in that because that technically is his idea.
Right.
But he wasn't exactly So it's kind of like a shared production, but really it's a Spielberg movie.
Right. He wasn't as hands-on as he would be in Star Wars.
Yeah, he's an executive producer on Red Tails.
Oh, there you go.
So he wasn't directing. I mean, when you think about it, he's actually got a very short directorial list.
Mm-hmm.
That was another thing. They got into some more of his past. I mean, they got into his college years and that car accident. I didn't know about that either.
Yep.
And the fact that he's opening up about that and he talks about those things really just helps me appreciate him even more. It doesn't take anything away.
Was what he said. He liked to go fast.
Yeah. He still likes fast things.
Yes.
What was that? Yeah, it's like, oh, well, we're going to do this. We're going to have the spaceships, but they're going to be going faster.
Yes. And then what was the everybody? He would always say to the people, just try it. Just try it. See what, or think about it. Just think about it.
Yeah.
And then they go and think about it and go,
you're right.
Yeah.
I want the spaceships moving, but I want them moving faster.
Right.
Or the reference between American Graffiti and Star Wars, where the good guys are driving the hot rods.
Mm-hmm.
The pieced together hot rods, where the bad guys are driving the out of factory, fresh off the lot models. I never looked at it that way, but I guess you could say that's right. Just absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
So I can't wait to finish it. I've been really enjoying it so far.
The last episode, I'm not gonna spoil it for you, but there's
too late.
They get to the more modern stuff there, and there's some technology that they use for the Mandalorian that is mind blowing. Favreau's in it and stuff. Deborah Chow's in it, so they bring it home to like the newer stuff.
Right.
And I think they even had George Lucas in there. Like I think they said it was 2018, so he's still. Like, I don't know if he's just making guest appearances or whatever, but I think he's still somewhat involved, even though he sold it to Disney. So
he might have sold it, but he's not out of it either. So yeah, he's not completely out of it. But yeah, the new stuff that they've come up with is really changing the way that the special effects movies are made, because McGregor said this himself, that when he was making episode 2 and 3 and whatnot, like he'll be he's in a green room sitting on a box talking to a tennis ball on a stick.
Yeah.
And he has no clue what the things are, in his mind, he's trying to create something. And then when he sees the final product, nothing like what he expected.
Yeah.
And the performance comes off fine. But now being able to walk around in this room that he could see everything.
Yeah.
He knows exactly where he's supposed to be and what to look at, and he gets a sense of the atmosphere.
The green screens are gone. They don't even use them anymore now. Well, they may, but like just for the
very little.
Yeah,
most people are using them for their Zoom calls.
Right. Like, all right, I'll give you one more thing. I think they call it the wall, and you would just walk in and you're just surrounded by screens, and they can put up whatever scenery they want up on this, and it's all crystal clear HD. They can put you anywhere. They can put you on a desert. They can put you in a forest. So basically, all they would have to do is just build this little, whatever stage that they needed for that scene, and just act right there in that moment without traveling or anything. That blew my mind. I was like, the technology, like I didn't realize they were using that kind of technology for The Mandalorian, but now knowing it makes sense, because it's like, it's spot on, man. It's production value. You can tell the production value is much better on those TV series that are out now.
Yeah, it's the volume. That's what it's called.
Yes, that's it. Yeah.
And they're using they use something similar like that for a couple parts of Rogue One, but they really stepped it up for The Mandalorian.
Mm-hmm.
They used it with Book of Boba Fett, obviously Obi-Wan Kenobi, Ahsoka, and stuff going forward. It hasn't made its way into the movies yet.
Yeah. Oh, but it's I'm sure it will.
I'm sure with how well it's doing with the the streaming service stuff and the TV, loosely calling it TV stuff, but the streaming service stuff.
Right.
It's just a matter of time till they are able to incorporate it into the movie stuff. Because just imagine, especially with like some of the Marvel stuff,
mm-hmm.
Or some of the upcoming Star Wars projects or whatever.
Yeah.
To be able to utilize something of that extent. Now, will the cameras that they use for the movies, which are different than the cameras that they use for the streaming stuff, react to the screens as well? Do they have to up the processing power? Do they have to make the volume bigger?
Yeah,
because I know that they've now made a couple of them since they're utilizing them so much. Who knows? I mean, who knows? But the fact that they're basically using a giant video game system.
Yeah.
to create. Because I remember back in the day, kids.
Yeah.
Back in the day, movie video games, the games based on the movies, always were awful.
Awful. Yep. Street Fighter 2, Jean-Claude Van Damme.
The movies based on video games were awful. The video games based on the movies were awful. There was no, I had the Batman and Robin game. Couldn't get past the first scene because, you're supposed to go up this hole. I couldn't do it. My friends couldn't. No one could do it. Who wrote this game? Because you can't play it. And you didn't have patches back then. You bought the game and that was it. You didn't have the updates, 15 updates, and nope. Once you bought that game, that was the game for the rest of eternity.
You had to deal with it. You didn't. It didn't suffer from social media backlash, and then they throw a patch out there to fix the problems.
Nope. You're stuck with it, kids.
Yep.
Enjoy. But there's a glitch and it doesn't work. Too bad.
Too bad.
You spent your $50 on it. You're keeping it. Can't return it now. So what would you give this series? I guess out of 10, I think
Out of 10?
Yeah.
I solid 8.5. I thought it was really it was entertaining, informative. Um, you know, I had no issues watching it. kept my attention. You know.
Yeah, I even though I haven't finished it, I am confident in saying I would give it an 8 as well.
Yeah.
Um, Again, it's a documentary. Sometimes it does feel very documentary in the way it presents itself. I did find a few moments of hard to follow along or just keep my interest.
Right.
But overall, it's been an eye opener. I am, like I said, I am glad that they were able to get the. It's not someone telling you the story of these people, it's the people telling you their stories.
Yes.
And, the people who actually made these special effects that made quote unquote the magic happen tell you the stories about what it was like, how they got involved, what they did, how they felt, everything. It makes it puts the humanity in the reality into it, which makes it more impressive and much more of a value to society, to appreciate the craft of the special effects. Again, nowadays it's not saying it's simple, but you create something on a computer, you put it up there, and boom, all of a sudden you have a guy in a suit instead of but walking around with dots on his face. That came from these folks that labored day in, day out, having to create stuff on the fly and take enormous risks to create the special effects in these movies that we've grown up and loved. That really have changed the way we view movies.
Yeah, like Iron Man. I didn't realize that, like, when he's forming or whatever, that's CGI'd or digital or whatever. But he's actually just walking around in like a red suit, with the dots and stuff, and they CGI him, with the actual armor on. Did not know that, But that's one of those things where it gives you a different aspect of how to watch it now. Is that digital or is not? But it looks so clean and crispy, you can't tell the difference.
No, again, the amount of detail. They started off paying so much attention to detail. That is something that's the hallmark of ILM, that has paid forward, and the amount of detail. Again, the Transformer movies, you see the Transformer characters standing there as robots, but you could look past the points and see things moving. In like when Optimus Prime walks, the wheels turn slightly.
Yeah.
And then you see pistons and robotic parts moving and turning and shifting. Even when there's just standing still, things are moving. That there's a life to these things beyond just. It would been so easy to just make a block robot like they did.
Yeah, back in the 80s.
In the 80s in the animated stuff, because you just can't put that kind of detail
right
into the hand-drawn stuff with the budget back then. But there's just creates the additional life that it's more than just a outwardly body, but there's moving parts inside that are constantly beating and turning and churning and just shifting, and with the creating the weight and the momentum and everything follows through. That is just an insane amount of detail for the human mind for one human mind to process. That someone sat there and go, we need to tweak this and we need to turn that and this needs to move and that needs to move.
Yeah,
it's just absolutely fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. And credit to them that they have kept up that level of detail.
Yep. 100%.
Watching this series and hear them talk about that they were doing this in 1975.
Yeah.
And here it's 2022.
Right. And with Disney in charge, you pretty much know they're in safe hands, that they're not going to falter on that kind of technology, that they're going to keep pushing it to, to become even better.
No, and again, that's something that even Walt himself was, well, we're not going to just draw a deer. We're going to bring in an actual deer and see how it moves and, study the anatomy in the body and how when it moves this leg and this happens and that happens, to just bring that extra layer of detail. And they did it again with The Lion King and other movies where they study these characters to make them more believable and more realistic, to bring in the life details. And here in ILM that they do the same thing, and we are better for it.
Yeah.
Because
I think a lot of the just to bring back Jurassic Park, a lot of the guys, the stop motion puppet guys, a lot of them were concerned that the computer generated version the dinosaurs wouldn't look as good because they couldn't perfect the skin scales, the skin tone and everything of it. And then when they pulled it off and gave everybody the viewing, they were like, oh crap. This guy just took my job.
No, puppets.
Yeah.
Again, in the earlier Jurassic Parks, when they did switch over, I thought that the digital weren't quite as good as the practical, but now you can, like I said, you can barely tell the difference.
Yeah.
So it's incredible. Absolutely incredible. So yeah, I'm happy it's there. It's happy it's available on Disney Plus. If you get a chance, if you are especially interested in understanding how these things work and are put together and came about, fantastic series. Even if you're just a Star Wars fan or a special effects fan, take the time, watch this. It's 6 parts. All came out July 27th. So you could just binge the whole thing. It is very like we said, eye-opening, very enjoyable, very well done, and yeah, I highly recommend it.
Yes, as do I.
Dave, thank you for coming on.
Yes, thank you for having me again.
Oh, my pleasure, and we will be doing this again soon.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, there you have it, folks. The first episode of WD Magicast is in the books. What did you think of Light and Magic, the documentary on Disney Plus? Let us know. Join our social media. Find us on social media on the web. Our main Facebook page is, you just look up WD Magicast. It's got a whole bunch of numbers on it. On Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter, we are simply at WD Magicast. You can leave a voice message through the Anchor app or Anchor.fm website and record a message electronically and email it to email@wdmagicast.com. You can also email us any questions or suggestions you may have for the show to that address as well. Links to all of these, including the Facebook page, are in the show notes. I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you for also sticking with us during this change. It's been a lot of things have changed. Fortunately, things were a little bit easier to change than I expected. And you guys on that year end didn't have to do much and just follow along on the ride. So thank you. Thank you for sticking with us. Thank you for coming back, enjoying the show under its new name with some changes, additional changes. But hey, to every season, turn. Change sometimes is necessary to progress. So thank you. Please go on. If you haven't done so, really gonna help the show out. Go on to Apple Podcasts, go on to Spotify, and leave a review. We have all 5-star reviews on both those platforms at the moment. Keep them coming. The more your reviews you put, the more people that find out about the show. Also, share it out. Share out. Let everyone know about the new show name, about the change. Share out your links. Let them know about the show. This will help the show grow. And that's the whole point with everything that's going on. Growth. Making the show bigger and better and more for you guys. More for you to enjoy. Walt believed in a big Disney family, and so do I. So thank you. Thank you for your time. I know how little time we all have, and the fact that you get to spend this time with us, we really appreciate it over here. Thank you. Don't forget to subscribe to the show while you're at it. This way you always know when new episodes are posted. And while you're at it, consider becoming a premium subscriber. Really help the show out. You can do this over at anchor.fm/WDMagicCast/support or find our Patreon page at patreon.com/WDMagicCast as well. You can also check out our merchandise shop, get some cool stuff for yourself over there. Some really cool WD Magic Cast stuff will be coming soon. It's on its way. You can find the links to all these in the show notes as well. Remember, this show is brought to you by listeners like you. As I've always said, whatever facing out there, the darkness, struggles, don't give up. Don't ever give up on yourself. Don't ever think you're not worth it. You are worth it. You are you are special, you are unique, and you are beautiful. Never give up, never give in, and don't be afraid to ask for help. Be your own hero, and let the world see how special and wonderful you truly are and how much you give to us. Now I'd like to end this week's show with a quote from Walt Disney himself. I want to retain my individuality. I was afraid of being hampered by the studio's policies. I knew if someone else got control, I would be restrained. Again, that's Walt Disney. Thank you again for listening, everyone, and I'll see you next time.